Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night after a conversation that went just a little too far? Maybe you shared something personal with your family, thinking it would bring you closer, only to feel that strange heaviness afterward, like something sacred had been misplaced. If you felt that, you're not alone. I've been there too. You reach a certain age, somewhere after 65, where you realize that not all truths bring peace. In fact, some truths, once spoken, only stir the waters. They invite judgment, misinterpretation, concern wrapped in control, or even silence where they're used to be warmth. I used to think being open was the best way to show love. I believed that honesty was the bridge that kept families close. And maybe it is when you're younger and the power dynamics are different. But after a lifetime of giving, working, raising, sacrificing, surviving, there comes a point where your peace has to come first. Not to build walls, but to build a quiet space inside you where you can breathe undisturbed. This video isn't about keeping secrets for the sake of it. It's about protecting what you've earned. Your wisdom, your calm, your right to live your later years without unnecessary emotional turbulence. So today, I want to share with you 5 secrets that I believe are best kept close to your chest after 65. I'm not sharing this to preach, but because I've learned these the hard way. And maybe, just maybe, I can help you avoid the same regrets. If you're new here, welcome. We're creating a gentle space for seniors who want to live with more clarity, more courage, and above all, more peace. Let's talk. The first secret you might want to hold on to a little tighter is the full story of your financial life. Now, we've been told our whole lives to be transparent with our loved ones, especially when it comes to money. It sounds wise, doesn't it? Prevent confusion, avoid surprises, set expectations. And that's true in some cases. But here's the reality few people talk about. Once you open the curtain on your finances, even with the best intentions, you may find yourself entangled in subtle power shifts that feel anything but peaceful. I once believed that by showing my family exactly what I had, I was building trust. I sat down with them one afternoon, feeling proud, organized, prepared. I showed them my savings, my investments, the will I had drawn up, even explained my funeral wishes. I expected appreciation. What I got instead were opinions, questions, worries dressed up as advice. Should you really be spending that much on travel? Maybe you shouldn't live alone anymore. Have you thought about selling the house now, before something happens? And before I knew it, every purchase, every small joy I allowed myself had to be explained, defended, justified. I began to feel like a child asking permission to live my own life. The shift was subtle, but it was real, and it came with a heavy emotional tax. Privacy, I learned, is not secrecy. It's self-respect. It's protection. And not everyone needs a front row seat to your financial life. Not because you don't trust them, but because you trust yourself more. And this isn't just about you. Let me tell you about Leo. He's 79, a widower with 3 children. After his wife passed, he decided to get everything in order and told his children how much he had, how he planned to divide it, and even who was named in what document. What followed was a slow unraveling of family harmony. One child started visiting more frequently, but not out of love. Another began hinting at financial help, while the third, who had always been independent, grew distant, almost resentful. Leo once told me, if he could go back, he would have kept his money talk between himself and his lawyer. Because once that knowledge was out there, the nature of the relationships changed. It became about what he had, not who he was. He said, I regret it. I really do. And I understand now. Because your money is the result of a life lived. It's your history, your effort, your sacrifices wrapped in numbers. And no one else can feel the full weight of what it took to earn that. So protect it. Not just the numbers, but the emotional peace that comes from living without having to explain yourself. Share only what needs to be shared and at the right time. And until then, enjoy your freedom without commentary. Now, the second secret, one that surprises many, is the day-to-day details of your health. Now wait, you might say, my family cares. They ask. They want to know. And yes, many families are loving and attentive. But love doesn't always equal emotional readiness. And when you begin sharing every ache, every concern, every off day, you may unintentionally become the symbol of decline in their eyes, not the resilient, layered person you still are. Let me tell you about Ruth. She's 74, vibrant, active, still drives, cooks gardens. One weekend, after a long hike with her walking group, she told her son she felt a bit stiff the next morning. Harmless, right? But within days, he had rearranged her medications, called her doctor behind her back, and suggested she think about a part-time caregiver. What began as a simple comment became a full-blown intervention. She felt unheard, unseen, and worse, disrespected. The truth is, when we casually mention our physical changes, we think we're sharing. But our family might hear alarm bells. They begin to worry. And in that worry, they may overstep. They may try to control. Suddenly, you're no longer trusted to know your own limits. And that's not fair. Here's what I've learned. Unless it's a serious health event that truly requires their involvement, it's okay to keep the day-to-day stuff to yourself. Talk to your doctor, of course. Journal your symptoms. Take care of yourself with intention. But you don't need to validate every sneeze or sore joint with someone else's concern. Because what you're preserving isn't just their peace of mind. You're protecting your independence, your dignity, the ability to be seen as whole and capable. You know your body better than anyone. You've lived in it through decades of storms and sunrises. You know when something is truly off. And more importantly, you know how to protect your sense of self while managing the inevitable realities of aging. Don't let the narrative of fragility define you. You're not your stiffness. You're not your pills. You are still you. And you have every right to choose when and how to speak about what's going on inside. Now let's talk about something deeper, something more invisible. Your personal regrets. We all have them. Even the most fulfilled among us carry moments that linger. The job we didn't take, the apology we never gave, the dream we set aside to raise a family. These regrets are real, and they are part of what makes us wise. But here's something I've discovered. Not every regret needs an audience. Not because it's shameful, but because it can unintentionally burden those we love. I once told my daughter that I wish I had traveled more in my 40s. I said it in passing, as a reflection, a whisper of what could have been. But she heard it as a judgment, that our life together had cost me something, that she, my own daughter, was a reason I didn't live fully. She never said it outright, but I saw the sadness in her eyes, and that broke something in me. What I meant as an internal whisper became an external weight. That's the danger of speaking regrets without care. Others might interpret them as their failure. They might feel responsible for the life you didn't live, and they'll carry that in a way you never meant them to. It doesn't mean you shouldn't reflect, but maybe reflection is something sacred, best kept between you and the mirror, or you and the page, or you and God, because not every lesson needs to be taught out loud. Sometimes your peace and theirs are both protected when your wisdom is offered through quiet strength, not backward sorrow. Say, I've learned so much from my choices instead of I wish I had. Frame your life as a path you honored, not a map you lost. That way, you leave your family with legacy, not guilt. Next, let's explore a minefield we've all stepped into at some point. Family conflicts. It's natural to want to help. We see our children disagreeing, our siblings feuding, our grandchildren hurt, and the instinct is to fix it, to step in with guidance, with clarity, with a wisdom we've earned. But what I've learned, painfully at times, is this. The more you involve yourself, the more likely you are to become the target instead of the mediator. I once told my son, during a heated conversation he was having with his sister, that maybe he could try listening more. I meant it with love, but he heard it as betrayal. He pulled away. The tension between them didn't dissolve, but now there was distance between me and him, too. I realized something vital that day. You can love people deeply without becoming a part of their storms. You can be present without inserting your voice into every fire. Saying nothing doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to let them figure it out on their own terms. Peace, real peace, is sometimes built in silence. Not the silence of disengagement, but the silence of restraint, of maturity, of knowing that your role now is not to referee every disagreement, but to be a steady presence. The calm in the corner, the soft eyes that say, I believe in you, even when you're fighting. Once you start discussing who gets what, it's no longer just a conversation. It becomes a calculation. Every word you say from that moment on is filtered through the lens of perceived fairness. Why is she getting the house? Why does he get the savings account? Didn't I do more for mom when she was sick? Suddenly, what was once a united family starts to shift into quiet factions. Even the ones who say they don't care might begin to act differently without even realizing it. They might check in more often, offer to help with errands, or become overly opinionated about how you spend your money, because they now see it as their future. This change doesn't come from malice. It comes from human nature. And that's exactly why this fifth secret is one worth guarding. Not hiding, guarding. You can still plan your legacy. You should have a will, an executor, and someone who understands your final wishes. But that doesn't mean your estate needs to become dinner table talk. It doesn't mean you owe anyone an explanation. Because here's the truth. What you leave behind is your final gift, not a contract. Let me tell you about Teresa. She was 85, a retired midwife, warm-hearted and known for her generosity. She loved her family deeply and decided to be open with her plans for her estate. She sat her children down, explained who would receive what, and even asked for their feedback, hoping to be fair. What she didn't expect was the tension that followed. One child went silent. Another became defensive. One of them, who had never shown much interest in her before, began calling every day. Teresa told me once with tears in her eyes that she wished she'd kept her plans private because the way her family looked at her changed. Not with hatred, but with expectation. She felt like a living will instead of mother. And that broke her heart because your value is not measured by what you leave behind in money. It's measured by how you made people feel while you were still here. And once your inheritance becomes common knowledge, you risk becoming the sum of your possessions in their eyes, not the person who built them. Now, here's the part most people overlook. When you withhold these 5 kinds of truths, your financial details, your health updates, your regrets, your opinions in family conflicts, and your estate plans, you're not being distant. You're being discerning. You're choosing peace. And peace, at this stage of life, is more valuable than being fully understood. It's more important than being seen as perfectly transparent, because transparency without wisdom can invite chaos. Sharing without boundaries can invite confusion, and openness without discernment can rob you of the quiet dignity you deserve. You see, we come from a generation that believed in keeping things close to the chest, not out of fear or pride, but out of an understanding that privacy is sacred. We didn't grow up broadcasting every thought and feeling. We measured our words. We observed. We waited. And somewhere along the way, the world shifted. Everyone began to share everything all the time. But just because the world got louder doesn't mean you have to. In fact, now more than ever, your strength lies in your stillness. in knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to open up and when to hold your ground. There is a deep comfort in knowing that you don't need validation, that your life speaks for itself, that your decisions are your own, that you can love fully without over-explaining, that you can show up for family without being at the center of every crisis, that you can offer your presence without offering all your secrets. Because peace isn't found in endless conversations and clarifications. Peace is found in understanding your worth so well that nothing outside of you can shake it. And if you've ever felt guilty for staying quiet, let me release you from that today. Silence can be love. Boundaries can be kindness. Distance can be protection. You've earned the right to decide what to share and when to share it. You've carried others for so long, financially, emotionally, physically. You've supported dreams, soothed conflicts, and sacrificed your own needs for the sake of family. But now, this chapter is yours. This season of life is for reclaiming space, for resting your spirit, for waking up and knowing that no one expects more of you than you're willing to give to. As so many of us live with regret because we felt pressured to be fully open, to please everyone, to prove our love through vulnerability. But love doesn't require disclosure. It requires discernment. It requires self-awareness. And above all, it requires the strength to say, I am still me, and I choose peace over performance. I choose solitude over chaos. I choose privacy over pressure. If you've shared too much before and been hurt by it, you're not alone. So many seniors carry silent wounds from conversations that felt safe until they weren't. From trusting too soon, from explaining too much, from believing that family would always understand. But understanding isn't guaranteed. And being misunderstood doesn't mean you were wrong to keep something to yourself. It means you were protecting something delicate, your peace of mind, your emotional center, your dignity. As you move through your days, think about the conversations you have. Do they leave you feeling lighter or heavier? Are you sharing out of love or out of obligation? Are you giving away pieces of yourself that no one truly asked for? Or worse, that someone might mishandle? These are questions worth asking, because the goal isn't to shut everyone out. The goal is to let the right people in at the right time, in the right way. You can still be close with your family without oversharing. You can still be loving without revealing every inner thought. You can still be generous without laying your entire life bare. These aren't contradictions. They're choices, and wise choices at that. In fact, your ability to hold space for yourself while still showing up for others might just be the greatest example of emotional maturity you've ever modeled. It's the quiet power of knowing who you are. Your children and grandchildren don't need to know every ache in your joints, every dollar in your account, every memory you wish you could change. What they need is your steadiness, your presence, your faith in them, your ability to listen without judgment, to guide without force, to love without conditions. That's what they'll remember long after you're gone. Not the conversations you had about your estate or your regrets, but the way you made them feel safe and seen and loved exactly as they are. And when it's time, when real help is needed, when your health truly shifts, when your end-of-life plans must be shared, you'll know, you'll feel it. And because you've waited, because you've chosen wisely, your words will land softly. They'll be heard as gifts, not obligations. They'll be received with the reverence they deserve. But until then, hold your truths close. Not because you don't trust your family, but because you trust yourself more. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you've decided to keep to yourself for the sake of peace? Drop in the comments. Let others feel the strength in your choice. Your story may just be the one that helps someone else let go of guilt and reclaim their calm. And if this message spoke to your heart, subscribe and stay with us. You're not alone in this. We're building a space where quiet strength is celebrated and wisdom is shared with intention, not pressure. Thank you for being here. Thank you for honoring yourself. Until next time, protect your peace and remember, you've earned it with every chapter of your life.